It's been over 2 months now since Trump rose from under a pile of Secret Service agents, blood on his ear, fist in the air, chanting, "Fight." Ever since that moment, one big question has been on everyone's minds. How did someone get so close to assassinating the former president? Well, according to a scathing report published by a bipartisan U.S. Senate committee this week, the Secret Service failed every step of the way. And the whole thing was foreseeable and preventable. Let's go through it.
Take a look at what happened.
That dramatic moment happened right here on a temporary stage set up on this big piece of farmland in Butler, Pennsylvania. And here, about 180 meters away, is where the shooter fired from, the American Glass Research Building, or the AGR. A good portion of this report focuses on this one building.
How did Mr. Crooks, how was he able to get an AR-15 onto the roof of that building?
The acting director of the Secret Service has admitted multiple times that he does not have a good answer to that question, and that he personally does not understand why the AGR building wasn't better secured. But what we learned from this report is that the Secret Service knew beforehand that this building could be a problem because local police told them so. One officer testified the area along the AGR fence line was a concern, specifically pointing out how close the building was to the stage, how open the field was, and how easy it was to get to from the nearby roads.
You've got to mitigate these line of sight concerns and issues. It is protection 101. It's just got to be done. You block it off with buses, farm equipment, whatever, tractor trailers, whatever you have.
Now, the report does mention that the Secret Service considered bringing in heavy trucks to block that line of sight, but in the end, they didn't. And what's more, this red line shows where the Secret Service ultimately drew their security perimeter. But notice the AGR building is on the outside. The committee, again, was never able to get a clear answer from the Secret Service on why they chose to exclude the AGR building from their site plan after identifying it as a problem. In fact, they couldn't even figure out who at the Secret Service was responsible for drawing up the perimeter in the first place.
That should be a very clear answer, and the problem is there is no answer. That was astonishing to us, is the fact that we could not find one point of contact who said this is the person in charge of making sure the plan was adequate.
The Secret Service told the Senate committee they thought by placing the AGR building outside of the perimeter, that meant it would be a local law enforcement responsibility. But local officers testified they told the Secret Service verbally that they didn't have the manpower to lock down the building, but that it needed to be locked down, to which they claimed the Secret Service copied and said they would take care of it. And take a listen to this body cam footage obtained by CNN of a local police officer at the AGR building just moments after the shooting.
I told them they need to post the guys over here. I told them that the Secret Service. I told them that Tuesday.
But when asked about this by the Senate committee, the Secret Service site agent denied ever being told that. One senator likened the whole thing to a famous Abbott and Costello skit.
What's the guy's name on first base?
What's the guy's name on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know.
The blame game is all over that report, and it is alarming, even from Secret Service personnel.
Ultimately, no one seemed to agree on who was responsible for making sure that the building or the roof was secure. And here's the thing. If this building had been within the Secret Service perimeter, maybe they would have done something about this. The fact that their counter snipers on these two rooftops behind the stage couldn't even see a good part of the AGR building because this big old tree was in the way. Take a look at this drone footage from the New York Times, which shows just how much it obscures the line of sight. And the local snipers were positioned inside the AGR building, below the shooters, so they weren't watching the roof either.
Whether it was Secret Service that should have been covering that building or local law enforcement, ultimately, the buck stops with the Secret Service.
I went to the roof of the AGR building where the assailant fired shots, and I laid in a prone position to evaluate his line of sight. What I saw made me ashamed. I cannot defend why that roof was not better secured.
Okay, so the roof of that building wasn't secure. That's a huge part of this. But there was also apparently a huge gap in what anyone in the Secret Service was able to see from the sky, which gave the shooter free rein to scope out the area himself. The Secret Service did have one surveillance drone meant to roam above the site, looking for anything suspicious, except the operator running that drone couldn't actually get it up into the air. He told the committee around 10 a.m. the morning of the rally, so this is like a full 8 hours before. He realized the drone wasn't working and that he wasn't even super comfortable flying the thing to begin with. He had very little training, less than an hour's worth. So he asks a Secret Service leader for help. The leader tells him, call tech support. Like literally, call the drone manufacturer's 1-800 hotline. But they don't answer. So he says, I continued to troubleshoot it myself, just to the best of my abilities, turning it on and off, reconnecting stuff. At some time after 4 p.m., I get a call back from tech support. So this is just 2 hours before the rally starts. Tech support tells him it might be a problem with the Ethernet cable. So he goes and grabs one, tries to fix the drone. But here's the thing. While all of this is happening, the shooter was flying a drone overhead undetected for more than 11 minutes, according to local police, trying to pinpoint the best spot to position himself. Now, should there have been a backup drone or anyone else around to help this sole drone operator? According to his testimony, just 2 days before the event, he'd actually requested more support, more drones, more people. But those requests were denied.
What if we had geolocated him because that counter-UAS platform had been up? It is something that I have struggled with. We could have perhaps found him. We could have maybe stopped him.
Now, what underpins all of these organizational lapses was the fact that while this was a joint effort between local law enforcement and the Secret Service, according to the Senate's report, they were still acting very much as two separate teams. They set up separate command posts, and they were on separate radio channels, meaning every time a local officer or sniper sent out an alert, that alert only lived on the local comms channel until someone decided to pass it on to the Secret Service through a phone call or a text. According to the committee's report, the leader of the Secret Service counter-sniper team told the committee, radios are preferred, they're instantaneous, but they didn't have our radios. We didn't have their radios.
There is not currently the capability for example, state law enforcement, SWAT personnel, or local law enforcement officers to communicate directly with Secret Service officers on site?
So technically you could do it, but it would take a long time to get it done.
It turns out this roundabout way of communicating was a huge part of the problem, because almost exactly 1 hour before the shooting, a local police sniper saw the shooter for the first time, wandering around the AGR building carrying a rangefinder, which is a camera that can measure distances. A bit suspicious, not the kind of thing the average person carries around. So the officer sends a photo of the man, who we now know is the shooter, to a group chat with all the other local snipers in it. A few minutes later, someone on the local sniper team forwards the message to the Secret Service sniper team leader, who is on the barn behind the stage. That team then sends an email, and I'll say that again, an email to the other sniper team on the roof next door. Meanwhile, time is ticking, and on the ground, agents are texting or calling each other with the news.
Communications are not happening like they should be happening in real time.
And here's the kicker, as laid out in the report. Not only was communication slow and chaotic, like a game of broken telephone, the information wasn't even making it to a bunch of people who needed to be looped in. One of the lead Secret Service agents on site and multiple other officials told the committee they had no idea there was a suspicious person with a rangefinder on site to begin with.
27 minutes that they knew there was somebody on the grounds with a rangefinder, and anybody in law enforcement, doesn't matter where you go, you hear rangefinder, you immediately think it's a rangefinder, it's a sniper rifle, if there's something nefarious afoot. For some reason, that information, according to the congressional report, didn't get out of the Secret Service security room to the advance team who's on site that day.
And it gets worse. 3 minutes before shots were fired, a local police officer sent out a radio alert that he saw someone on the roof of that AGR building. But remember, the Secret Service wasn't on this radio channel, so the local command post passes on that message to the Secret Service command post through text. But for whatever reason, that information never seems to make it to Secret Service snipers on the roof. So they apparently had no idea what was going on. All they could see, from their perspective, was local police officers running towards the building with their guns drawn. They told the committee, "That's a pretty big deal for us." So immediately we turned and faced our guns towards the threat area. We didn't know what was happening, but it seemed pretty serious, especially with the local response. It was around this time that people in the audience also started to notice something was wrong.
We heard whispers in the audience that there was a possible person over on the roof.
We noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us.
Why on earth was President Trump not removed from the stage at that moment?
So again, Senator, the reason why President Trump was not removed was, again, we did not have anything more than locals working an issue at the 3 o'clock. Wasn't determined as to whether or not it was the same individual or not.
While the Secret Service was trying to figure out what was going on, here's what some of the local police officers were seeing, according to their body cam footage obtained by NBC.
One officer lifts the other to the roof. He sees the gunman off camera and falls back to the ground. That officer then runs to his car to grab a weapon.
It's close, bro. Dude, he turned around on me.
As backup arrives, there's confusion about where the gunman is.
This building, he was on top of this building, the left one.
Immediately after that, one of those officers sent out a much more frantic radio alert saying the suspect on the roof was armed. But that alert didn't make it to anyone on the Secret Service team.
Do you not have a channel of communication by which they can say, gun, take him out?
So again, Senator, that information stayed in local channels and did not make it over to Secret Service.
The left hand just wasn't talking to the right hand. I think this event could have been potentially avoided.
And that was the conclusion of the Senate committee too, that between the lack of a coherent chain of command, technical problems with properly surveilling the area, and a completely disjointed way of communicating key information between everyone on site, all of this, the chaos, the confusion, the nearly successful attempt on a former president's life, it all could have and should have been avoided.